is on.
Yes, once again, good morning. My name is Dwight L. Davis, and I'm the president and CEO of the Motivational Center. The Motivational Center was created in 1969, actually. We purchased the building that we're in 1970. And at that time, the Motivational Center, coming up out of the riots in the city of Wilmington, in particular in West Center City, it was created to provide GED services. GED, ABA, Adult Basic Education, and even we had a DAPI program in the building at that time, in 1970, under the Model Cities era. Being a teenager at that time, living in West Center City, it was this organization, the Motivational Center, that provided me with the resources and the means to go to college. So there were a few of us that came up out of West Center City that we went to Dell State. Some went to Tuskegee, some went to other schools. And not knowing at that time that I was being prepared to ultimately come back into the community, into West Center City, and continue working with the agency that I've been now working on behalf of the community for the last 30 years. And, you know, I'm proud of that because oftentimes, you know, we pretty much forget where we come from and the commitments that we made to our community. We're here this morning to have a discussion on what we've entitled the Pardon of Innocence Workshop 2. The Pardon of Innocence Workshop 2. I passed out some handheld copies of the U.S. Constitution because incorporated in the Constitution, there's a section that says slavery nor involuntary servitude shall not exist except that you've been duly convicted in the court of law. Now, this exception is what, in my opinion, has caused 1 in 15 African Americans, in particular in this country, to either be in some type of incarceration, either probation, parole, or in a jail or in a federal institution. And that means that these individuals, once they're released, they will have criminal records for the rest of their lives. Now, in my opinion, that's a violation of your United States constitutional rights. We fought and we struggled in the civil rights era for civil rights. That's important. Now, the state of Delaware, in particular, ratified the United States Constitution in 1865. 1865. So we're really not that far away from the legislative mandate that said that we were, in fact, still in slavery. And when I got started, it wasn't even 100 years. When the riots broke out in the city in the first time, around 1965, 66, it was like almost 100 years after the ratification of the Constitution by the state of Delaware. All states didn't ratify it at the same time. Now, to set the premise for this dialogue, I want to read from the Bible. We're in the period of time that people are going to be going to church and reading the Bible, and you know, there are those that are Muslims that are reading the Quran, and there are those that are Jews that are reading the Torah. But I want to read this one chapter from the book of Exodus. And it begins, These are the names of the sons of Israel, who along with their households accompanied Jacob to Egypt. And he begins to name them. In course of time, Joseph and all his brothers and that entire generation died. The Israelites were prolific and increased greatly, becoming so numerous and strong that the land was full of them. When a new king ascended the throne of Egypt, one who did not know about Joseph, he said to his people, "These Israelites have become too many and too strong for us. We must take steps to ensure that they increase no further. Otherwise, we shall find that if war comes, they will side with the enemy, fight against us, and become masters of the country." So taskmasters were appointed over them to oppress them with forced labor. This is how Pharaoh's store cities, Pithom and Ramses, were built. But the more oppressive the treatment of the Israelites, the more they increased and spread, until the Egyptians came to loathe them. They ground down them with harsh demands, setting them to make mortar and bricks and to do all sorts of tasks in the fields. In every kind of labor, they made ruthless use of them. The king of Egypt issued instructions to the Hebrew midwives, of whom one was called Shiphrah, the other Pua. When you are attending the Hebrew women in childbirth, he told them, check as the child is delivered. If it is a boy, kill him. If it is a girl, however, let her live. But the midwives were God-fearing women and did not heed the king's words. They let the male children live. Pharaoh summoned the midwives, and when he asked them why they had done this and let the male children live, they answered, Hebrew women are not like Egyptian women. They go into labor and give birth before the midwife arrives. God made the midwives prosper, and the people increased in numbers and strength. And because the midwives feared God, he gave them families of their own. Pharaoh then issued an order to all the Egyptians that every newborn Hebrew boy was to be thrown into the Nile, but all the girls were to be allowed to live. This is from the scriptures. And we're establishing this because we have to stop looking at what's happening to us individually. We have to look at it collectively. Now, when you look recently, and if I get some copier, I'll make copies of this article here. Recently, the national president of the NAACP, Ben Jealous, was in Wilmington. And he came to Wilmington to support an amendment permitting felons voting rights, permitting felons to obtain voting rights. And in the article, and I want to say this about that, we want to thank the Honorable Dennis P. Williams administration and Director Claude McCrae for permitting us to be here in this beautiful conference and training center. We really want to thank him because he attended this meeting. And I want to just give you a little background of this meeting because I wasn't invited to attend this meeting. I happened to be in the city-county building taking care of some other business when I was notified that the national president of the NAACP was coming through the door. And I turned around and there he was, Ben Jealous, state representatives and senators. And I said, well, what's going on? And they said, well, he's in town and he wants to support the felons' right to vote. I said, well, this is what I do, right? So I go up to the press conference and the place is packed with people waiting for the press conference. And I looked at all the elected officials lined up behind Ben Jealous, supporting felons' right to vote. So the reporter said, Dwight, isn't this what you do? I said, yes, this is what I've been doing for almost 15 years. He said, well, would you agree to be interviewed? I said, of course, right? So anyway, what happened, the result of what happened is the newspaper article. I ended up in the paper. But listen what it says in the paper. It says, current Delaware law particularly affects black residents. According to data from the Sentencing Project, an advocacy group that supports reform of sentencing policies, 95% of the 7,407 people who cannot vote in Delaware because of a felony conviction are black.